Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the headlines. And this time around, I'm going to bring you to Indonesia. So this is Indonesia. This entire area is Indonesia. Very, very massive country. This point to this point is basically, this point to this point is basically almost the entire length of the African Sahara Desert, or from Portugal all the way to the middle of Ukraine, almost. So basically, the focus now I want to bring you to is actually to Papua. So on this island is known as New Guinea. No idea why is it called New Guinea. I didn't go and read up about it, but it's more known to be called Papua. And just like you see Papua New Guinea, this area is Papua. And there is this big major incident that happened in Papua, is the abduction of this New Zealand pilot whose plane was I'm not sure if it's a crash, but anyway, he got abducted. His plane was burnt, and he was adopted by this group called the West Papua National Liberation Army. And this happens on the 7th of February. So it's actually quite some time ago. It's around 3 months ago. And so he was accused for violating a no-fly zone that this army have issued over West Papua region. And interestingly, he is arrested for violating no-fly zone, but he's being used for demanding the independence of the Papua, which means that they have no rule of law. They didn't follow their own rule of law. There's no rule of law. Basically, which means they are no different. They're not even a government. So, which then negates and contradicts the entire claim that they have a right to declare a no-fly zone, because basically you have no law, no proper systems. So yeah, that's kind of confusing, and this caused a lot of problems, and this also becomes a diplomatic nightmare for Indonesia, because this is not the Indonesian that was adopted. So what happened is that the Indonesian military sent in their special forces into Papua to try to rescue him, and unfortunately, they got ambushed. The forces got ambushed, and at least 4 soldiers were killed. If I'm not wrong, it's actually 5 in that specific ambush alone. There are more people who died across this very, very low intensity conflict, because these liberation armies are very small, in a very very massive place. We are talking about, like, 600 kilometers across, from this border to West Papua. We are not even the entire of Papua, and if from north to south, we are talking about, like, at least 400-500 kilometers. This is stupidly huge, and an army of merely a few hundred at most. Tell the Indonesian government to now the whole Papua should go independence is like an a python trying to swallow a dinosaur. I mean the big one, Bronchiosaurus. So anyway, it's a very sad thing though. The Indonesians had this very bad kind of PR situation, because these are the special forces, and they got ambushed, and they ambushed a force of 36 soldiers within the Nuga district. So Nuga district, I think it's around here. This is the Nagi, so it should be around this area if I'm not wrong. And they at first so what happens is that this liberation forces they say that they killed 9 soldiers, and then it was dismissed by the Indonesian government as fake news, and they said that there's only 1 casualty. Then after that they admitted 4 after they managed to recover, and one of them actually is a soldier that fell down a 50-meter deep ravine. And so what happens is that this soldier first they were attacked. The soldiers then fell into the ravine. They tried to rescue him, and then they got attacked again while they're trying to rescue this soldier. So it's kind of a calamity kind of a military operation that everything that can go wrong went wrong. So in a week ago, 2 weeks ago, there's a video that came out. So this New Zealand pilot appeared in the video, and then he tries to tell the world, the Indonesian government, to stop bombing where the separatists are, because he's there. So he don't want to be killed. At least that's the excuse. And that also show the terror group, or the Liberation Army group, is trying to show that he's still alive and well. And so until today, this pilot is still under the custody of this Liberation Army, this West Papua Liberation Army. It's very hard to imagine him to be released, because the previous condition was that he will not be released until West Papua is independent, which is sort of funny. So it's like, okay, let's imagine this case of the Indonesian government agreed, okay, West Papua is independent. So what? Then what is this army going to do? Are they going to come out and run for election? They don't represent any people, so it's like, that's kind of funny. There will always be people who think that they are doing something bigger. And there was also this very interesting news coming out of Papua, was that there's this group, this armed criminal group called the KKB, and so there was this leader called the Joni Botak. Botak in Bahasa, in the Indonesian or Malay language, means no hair, bald, just like this police chief. Then I cannot find the photos of him. I think this is the closest thing that I can find, which they look like they have a lot of hair, which is like a contradiction. So anyway, I don't know how he looks like, but he was killed. Apparently this KKB leader was killed by KKB. It was killed by a rival group of the same KKB. So so this is confirmed by the Papua police chief, General Matthias Fakiri, which is actually him. He said that Johnny Botak was ambushed, abused, and shot by another KKB group. So I wondered if KKB is just another short form for mafia. So maybe it's 2 different mafia groups. I have no idea. So this is a very interesting development, and it just shows this entire region of Papua is a little bit of a problem for Indonesia, and the Indonesian government vow that they will make sure that Papua continues to be part of Indonesia, and they will continue to spend a big amount of resources and money into Papua for their development plans, despite the threat from separatist groups. And this actually comes in the form of a presidential instruction. Basically, it's like the executive order for the Americans, and that all the 43 ministries and agencies are to assist and accelerate the development in Papua. So a bit of context, why Papua is part of Indonesia. As you can see that the people looks like Africans. Basically, they just look like Africans to me. And these Polynesians or African Polynesian Africans, I don't know. So they are very different people. In this area of Papua, they are entirely different kind of people from the typical Indonesian locals. And so this is the history and the context. So at the independence of Indonesia, so Netherlands was like the colonizer of large parts of Indonesia, but Netherlands argued that West Papua is a different kind of land. It's totally different ethnically from the rest of Indonesia, and they are arguing in United Nations that this should be an entirely new state. It should not be part of Indonesia, and the people within the West Papua also asserted that culturally, religiously, and ethnically they are just different from Indonesia. However, the legal and ethical imperative of an independent Indonesia occupying the entire territory of the Dutch East Indies is actually so basically Indonesia have to take this land is something to do with the Cold War, and United States needed Indonesia's support to counter the communist threat, or at least the Soviet circle of influence. So United States sponsored the 1962 New York Agreement, which then enabled Indonesia to assert jurisdiction over the entire of West Papua. And under the agreement, Netherlands and the local West Papuan administration is dissolved. And then the UN then organized a referendum, just like the one Russia did for Zaporizhia, Kherson, Donetsk, and Luhansk, largely, which will then determine whether the region will want to be part of Indonesia or become independent. And this vote was held in 1969, and it's called the Act of Free Choice, just like what the Russians did in Ukraine. Free choice. And 1,025 government selected delegates voted, and very unsuspiciously, totally natural, nothing to be concerned of, unanimously, all 1,025 of them voted integration with Indonesia. And this division was then approved by the United Nations General Assembly with Resolution 2504. And yeah, welcome to annexation, approved by United Nations. And this perceived, obviously this process is definitely perceived by people as unfair. As I said, the vote count is totally natural. Totally natural. Natural. And yeah, so in the eyes of the West Papuans, they feel that they are being denied the rights to self-determination, and then there was then allegations of discrimination, marginalization, and rights abuse by the Indonesian authorities. And I would say that in the earlier days of Indonesia, Indonesia was under a dictatorship. So it could be possible. The Indonesian military in the earlier days was also basically Indonesia operates almost like a junta. So yeah, that I can imagine all the discrimination, marginalization, right abuses, So and this leads to dissatisfaction and low level insurgencies for decades, and then as a result, a lot of new groups, a lot of those freedom groups, liberation groups, rebel groups, separatist groups start to form. We have the TPNPB, which is the one that kidnapped the pilot, the Free Papua Movement, United Liberation Movement for West Papua, the West Papua National Committee, and I just find it weird. Why none of them want to be part of Papua New Guinea? You are all Papuans, right? Why only West Papuan? You should say no Papuan unity. No, then Papua New Guinea should send their military and liberate them. No, something like that. But no, they just want power for themselves. No, totally not hypocritical. No, absolutely normal. No, nothing unusual. So it's all from the heart. No, true emotions. And so the indigenous indigenous populations of course have certain level of support for such a independent movement. Especially, there's always a suppression of political activities, and of course the use of armed forces like the military and the police. So this actually contributes to this simmering unhappiness, but they are nowhere close to being suppressed in a violent way. That's not exactly the case. So yeah. And as I mentioned, the Indonesian government, made it a point, especially, Jokowi, the president of Indonesia, made it like a literal point and a highly PR'd visit to Papua. And you can see in this photo that he visited Papua, very, very huge welcome. And you can see that he's totally out of place. It looks like that's not part of his country. But it's part of his country, and they all speak Bahasa Indonesia. So yeah, they all speak Malay and or Indonesian language, and then yeah, but this visit is also part of the commitment to of the Indonesian to make sure that Papua stays Indonesian, and yeah. So this is the context of the entire situation over at West Papua, in the most eastern part of Indonesia. Some kind of oxymoron, right? The West Papua, but it's the most eastern. So anyway, thank you for watching. Maybe you will find this interesting. This is very underreported issue, but it's actually pretty major issue, especially for the Pacific Island nations, New Zealand, and as well as for Indonesia. And Indonesia is trying to stop all these separatist movements, and they used to have problem with Aceh, and finally they gave Aceh a lot of leeways, a lot of autonomy to do whatever they want, and they stay as part of Indonesia. I would imagine Papua would get something similar, but Papua don't really need that kind of thing. As long as there's investment and people have a good life, I think generally it should be okay until someone get greedy. They get greedy, they don't want the Papua New Guinea to come and liberate them. They want to liberate themselves, kind of thing. Yeah. So anyway, thank you for watching. Do press the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next update.